Fantastic. So thank you everyone for joining us today in this unique getting on our way to the newer normal. We are so excited to share this topic with you about applying lean concepts in service, support functions, and the often forgotten office. Julie and I have been lucky enough to learn and apply lean manufacturing and Lean Six Sigma concepts over the past 20 years. So we worked in various industries, so that means that these concepts are applicable everywhere. And today we're going to demonstrate that to you. Fun fact, when I was an intern at Johnson Controls way back in the summer of '97, my first summer not lifeguarding, which is pretty miserable, I was in their training department and I was actually proofreading all of their training material. And I didn't know what I was reading then, but it was all of their lean manufacturing concepts and training tools for all of their employees. And it was pretty cool because when I got to Toyota 2 summers later, I actually got to see everything in action. So it was a fantastic learn and then see it actually working that embedded my experience and helped me learn even more. So we hope to surprise you with how valuable these items and concepts are in the office and how easy they are to do. Before we go any farther, we have to introduce you to our fabulous families. Julie's husband, JP, you've got mine, it's Andy, Lauren, and Max. You're going to be hearing about them later, so we thought you might like to have an actual visual with the story that you're going to hear. Sadly, Max got a quarantine buzz cut a few weeks ago, so his beautiful hair is gone, but it's growing back.
But JP has a hat on.
So what do we do at JointPivot? We love to find the root cause of problems and the root cause of what makes things work. Our overall goal is to create valuable solutions. So today we're going to go over a couple tools to help you find root cause and share kind of everything about waste and whatever you need to know to help you on that journey. More about us, Julie and I have worked together at our last 4 companies, both directly and indirectly. We've done everything from automotive to energy to consumer packaging, retirement homes. So again, as I said earlier, we've done this in lots of industries, lots of services, and lots of functions. We know it's applicable. If you don't believe us when we're done here, reach out, email us. We'd be happy to talk more. We're going to cover the basics of lean, a little bit about the history, but we want to focus on why the basics and foundations are so important, why they're good for your company, and why they're good for your employees. Companies that truly value their employees, listen, and have successfully implemented continuous improvement are going to see a positive impact to their bottom line, right? And that's what we all want at our companies. You will see more engagement, lower turnover, and an overall workforce that is excited to speak up because they know people are listening, because they see you actually implement their ideas. Yes, you will never get 100% of everyone on board. That's fine, it is what it is, but focus on the people that are on board and the ones that want to get there. So what is lean? So I've got some bubbles up here. We've got our first poll to get some interaction in our webinar. So Julie, you want to go ahead and pop that up?
You got it.
So what do you think lean is? Feel free to select all that you think are applicable. Give you about 5 more seconds. Let's see the results.
I'll give them a sec here. There's more votes coming in.
Oh, okay. So lean is some of these and lean is not some of these. It's reducing
There we go.
calories.
So let's share our results here. Okay, so 88% of you think it's eliminating waste and continuous improvement. Great answer there. 53% think it's culture. 47% think 5 whys. See, 18% think fish bones. Oh, I like the 6% on reducing calories. That's what I would have voted for. Love it. Fantastic.
So good. We're on the right track here. There's some good thoughts about what lean actually is. So that's fantastic. A couple of these are tools, a couple of them are concepts. We'll be going over them. But the key that I want to get out is that it's hard work. it does take time and it does take planning, and it takes engagement from the people that actually do the work. But to give you a quick win that we've had recently, as I was working with a sales team of individuals that are actually on the phone today, so shout out to you guys. We had a sales team who had some newer employees who weren't sure what to do next, right? So they were sometimes going to their leader, what do I do? They weren't sure. Well, we wanted to create an autonomous environment where employees know what to do. So he challenged the team that needed to do the work to actually create the processes. And so we had some back and forth, some meetings, some improvement to the processes. And what was so cool is that we got to see some of them being implemented. I haven't talked to them in the last month or so to see where they are now, but the awesome thing is that the people that do the work got to give the input and create the process. So they planned and they did it. Fantastic. Where does lean come from? So lean comes from the Toyota production system. Well, where does that come from? It actually comes from Henry Ford and his assembly line. So I'll give you just a couple quick facts. I won't bore you with history unless you think it's super amazing. We can talk offline. But Henry Ford invented the assembly line. If you've ever seen the videos of the Model Ts going down the line and people putting car parts on, that was the assembly line. The problem was that he could make any car, but it had to be black. You've probably heard stories that you can have anything you want, but it's got to be black. Well, as car makers were becoming more and more experienced with this, they started to add variety, which means they could make 100 red cars one day and 100 black cars the next and 100 yellow ones. Well, people don't order 100 red cars in a row, right? A customer might come in and buy a red car, the next one buys a yellow and then a blue, and then they want, a sedan and then a sports coupe, right? It's a whole mix of different things. So Toyota was building upon this and began to focus on right sizing, right? Building the right amount of cars for what the customers wanted. They focused on the utilization of raw materials and people, right? Making sure that their people were fully used during their days at work. They took advantage of the space, making sure that they weren't wasting a bunch of space and people running all around. The ultimate goal here was to eliminate waste, as you guys selected in our first poll. So the Japanese would always say, when I was at Toyota, I was there for about a decade, is that they wanted to do more with less. One of my favorite stories from one of my coordinators there is that they would comment that Americans were very wasteful. And I'm like, what? He's like, oh, big roads, big cars, big golf courses, big parking lots, big malls. And it's like, yeah, I guess you're right. And if you think about the size of Japan in relation to the United States, it's tiny, right? And after World War II, parts of the countries are completely wiped out. So for them to rebuild, they had to do more with less, right? They had less space, they had less resources. People had to focus on both building up infrastructure, but also supporting their companies. Again, doing more with less, which forced them into innovation, AKA continuous improvement. So thinking about having the right people at the right place with the right time, think about the work that you do. What do you have to have at the right place to do your job? What decisions have to be made when and where and by whom? Do people even know they have to do it, right? So we want to make sure we visualize all of this and plan it and understand. Key thing here that's on the slide is that I've got a quick snapshot of the Toyota Way from 2001. This is my actual copy, as I have stored away for forever and ever, and a picture of the Toyota Way in regards to like a house or structure. The two big things for them were continuous improvement and respect for people. When companies were studying Toyota to figure out how they were doing, what they were doing, to try and steal the secrets, they couldn't. They could take the tools, they could take some of the concepts, and they could take the big activities, but what they always forgot about was the culture, the respect for people, and continuous improvement. That's hard to replicate, right? Today we're going to go over why that is so hard to replicate. So thinking about you and yourself at your company, what are you doing to show respect for every individual and continuous improvement? Are you talking to your customers about what that means to them? So what you're delivering is actually what they want. And think about it another way. We have paying customers who pay for our products and services, right? Well, what about our internal customers, right? everyone has an internal customer to satisfy. It could be someone on your team, right, that reports to you. It could be on a project team that you're the leader of, right? It could be a contractor, consultant, anyone sitting next to you, or even at a different work site. There's always an internal customer. A good example that we've got is that every function is a customer of talent acquisition, or recruiters, right? They have to hire people to support our functions. We want the right person with the right skill set to show up at the right day, right, when we need them. And if you think about the whole talent acquisition as a process, think about the recruiter asking the hiring leader for their expectations, right? If the hiring leader doesn't tell them, they're not going to bring in candidates that are valuable. And if the recruiter doesn't ask, again, they're going to bring candidates in that aren't valuable. We're going to be wasting time in interviews and phone screens and paperwork. And if we don't have that decision maker involved in the process along the whole way, we could get to the very end, the final panel interview, after travel and months of screening people, to find out that the decision maker doesn't even like this person, or they are missing the skill set, right? Or they're
Never had that happen. Never had that happen.
So it's so key to have the right people involved in the process along the way. And that's why we love to visualize processes, so we can see who the internal supplier customer is. And again, why is this important for the office? Because we're moving information through tons of stuff. We've got paperwork. It's endless. If you were to visualize all the information that goes through, you'd have sticky notes throughout your entire building. So key point here is that we want to build quality in throughout the entire process. If we focus on quality at the end, we're going to have the person show up to that final interview who's not the right fit, who doesn't have the right skill set, and we wasted the whole time. Toyota has this concept called the and-on, right? Literally on the assembly line, there's a cord that you can pull if you discover a problem or a quality issue. Right? For example, a red car is going by and I have to put the side view mirror on and it's white, right? Well, I'm not going to put a white side view mirror on a red car because that's not what the customer wants. So I pull the and-on and people come and help me get the right side view mirror to put on. Maybe it takes 25 seconds, 30 seconds. Problem solved at the root. What happens if we didn't solve that? Or worse, what if we had the wrong GPS package in a car and it continues on down the line because no one stopped it? No one had the guts to stop it. No one wanted to admit that there was a mistake. The car ends up in the yard, gets put on a rail car, takes the car to a dealership, and then the person who ordered it gets it and it's wrong. So now you have a mad customer, and now you have a lot of work to do to fix all of the problems that occurred, right? You might have taken out the entire dashboard, and it costs a lot of money and time, and I'm not going to go into that, but we want to fix quality at its source, and we know what good quality is because we know what the customer wants. Question for all of you is, are you talking to your customers? Do you know what they want? Are you listening? Are you acting? Thinking about now in this time where we're all working from home, not that we have spare time, but our time is spent differently right now. Are we having those engaging conversations with both the customers that are paying, but also the customers that we provide information to? How are we monitoring their experience? Again, what are we doing? We have to ask, we have to listen, and then we have to act. And if we're not doing any of this, we could be delivering, under-delivering, or completely wasting our time and delivering the wrong item, which plays into a concept of cost, quality, and speed, right? These are three elements that everyone expects. High quality, low cost, at a certain speed that people want. Lean is all about getting us to the ideal state, right? At the quality that meets the customer's need, at the cost they're willing to pay, and at some sort of speed. The challenge is all three of these are not possible all the time, right? We could probably brainstorm a ton of examples that you think they are, and that's fine, we can do that afterwards. But the key thing is do we actually know what the customer is expecting or what they want because we've talked to them? So do customers' expectations differ or change over time? Are we constantly having that conversation with them so we know what we're delivering and if it meets them? And a challenge here is that in today's world, new competition is joining the marketplace all the time. There's ongoing disruptors with various bells and whistles, different costs, different kind of attributes to what they're doing that might kind of shine a bright light for your customer, right? And it might attempt to steal them away. but how are you always focusing on these 3 items to be efficient, to be effective, and meet their needs, and staying in that constant communication so you know if they ever start to get a wandering eye and see what else is out there. Stay ahead of curve, focus on these 3 items.
And really, it's important to note too, Jen, here that these may be different depending on your customer. I think about this every time I go to a local sub shop around here that advertises that they're fast. But every time I walk in there, they start making my sub when I tell them what I want, and they inevitably start throwing lettuce on the sub, and I don't want lettuce on it. And then they just try and scrape it off, but I can still taste it. So if they would just ask me, I would like the high quality and low cost, I will forgive the speed on that case. So then I may change and take my service elsewhere, because you really can't scrape lettuce off a sub. It doesn't work.
When it's a little shreds, right?
It is, yes. I can still taste it.
Absolutely. And something quality, to Julie's point, it might take longer, but if the customer knows that and there's that conversation, it can be, it's expected and it can be okay.
Exactly.
So this is our version of a lean house. There are many lean houses out there. You can Google it. You're going to see different interpretations. This is a combination of obviously what I experienced at at Toyota, what I experienced at other companies that actually worked, and then also what didn't work. The thing about this lean house that I want to make a point is that it's a visual representation of my values and principles that I expect from my company. It can be posted on walls, but I have to be talking about it, and I have to be teaching about it, and I have to hold people accountable to it. So what makes up this lean house? Well, I've got values to start with. Those are on the bottom. Those are continuous improvement and respect for every individual. A value is what you believe in. It's what you strive for. It's how you want to raise your kids. What do you want to instill in them, right? I want my kids to be self-sufficient. I want them to be able to get dressed. We're working on figuring out how to put clothes away and put hangers on things right now. I want to teach them how to do this so they don't have to ask me and I don't have to tell them to do it. My favorite example from, I think about 2 weeks ago, is I go downstairs and Max, our 6-year-old, is sitting in the middle of the kitchen. He's got a piece of white bread, a hot dog inside, just doused in ketchup. And he is the happiest person in the world. He's eating it. And I'm like, what are you doing? It's 10:30 in the morning. And he's like, I was hungry. And I'm like, you made a hot dog? And he's like, yeah. And I go, who taught you how to make a hot dog? And he's like, well, the last time Daddy made one, he showed me how to use the microwave. And I'm like, fascinating. And so I look at the microwave and the door is wide open. There's a kid chair in front of it that he had to step on to get to it. The bread it's kind of laying on the counter, not closed, and there's ketchup on the counter, but luckily the refrigerator was closed. It beeped, so it would remind him to close it. The cool thing was that he did it by himself. He was so excited and so proud of himself, and I definitely wasn't going to burst his bubble. So I had to acknowledge that I was happy that he was being self-sufficient. He didn't bother Daddy and I because we were on a phone call or doing something for work. But instead I asked him questions. How would he do it differently next time, right? Remember to close the bread so it doesn't get stale. Close the microwave door so no one hits their head, etc. I want to reinforce the behavior and the good behavior that I saw, right, that falls in line with our values. Principles, as I move up from continuous improvement and respect for every individual, shows us the standardization, just in time, and first time done right. So a principle is a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system and remains constant regardless of the situation. So remaining constant regardless of the situation is key here, because it goes back to reinforce why lean is applicable anywhere. Principles help provide strong guidance, right? They could be instructions, they could be a process map, they could be some sort of visual management telling us how to do something. They're fantastic. I can't wait to tell you more about them. The key is that to get the output of our house, right, the voice of the customer, I have to do all of these well. Can I meet the voice of the customer by not doing all of these well? I can, right? But at what cost to your company? What cost to your employees? What cost to time, et cetera, headaches, right? So to get that ultimate utopia, we want to be practicing all of these 3 in good harmony. So what does this feel like? I'm going to paint a picture for you. And Julie and I have both worked at companies where this worked really well and companies where it didn't work very well. And it's got a feeling about it. You can feel it when you walk in the doors or you walk into a department. So imagine that I have to cross a river, right? And we're all on one side. It's a team. Just imagine being on a team with a leader and other team members. Our leader has created respect and obviously trust. They've trained us on how to use an oar to get across. They've given us the correct tools so we can all go at the same speed to get across. We follow them because we trust them. So when a shark comes up to eat us as we're crossing the river, or we have to navigate around some crazy waves or boulders or whatever, we trust them because they've demonstrated skill sets and abilities in the past that has allowed us to trust them, even when we're kind of going into things blind. And we get to the other side, together safely in one piece. And it was fun, it was teamwork, it was challenging. Well, what about when it's not working? Raise your hand if you've been a team that didn't go so well and you were not having fun with some things and whatnot. And this team is being challenged to get across that river, right? And you're kind of looking like you think someone's the leader, but you're not sure because they're not communicating. You look on the side, you're all on the beach and there's some people over there in like lawn chairs drinking beers. You've got people in like floaties. You've got a superhero who just flies by you in a super yacht, who's going to be the first to the other side, even though that wasn't the goal. The goal was for us to arrive at the same time. It's not fun, right? It's miserable. You don't have trust in a leader. You don't even know who the leader is. There's gossip. You're talking about the person in the super yacht who just went by you and all the wake went in your face. Like, it's not cool. And it's hard to get across. It's not fun. It's going to lead to turnover. It's going to lead to like just a bad taste everywhere. Now, the companies that we worked at that did this well still weren't perfect, right? There were still frustrating moments, but we knew what we were striving for because the leaders had us on a journey. And we continued to work and we continued to get guidance on how to be there. There will be times of frustration, even when it's good. Patience is key. It's a journey. So how do we get there? Well, the first value is continuous improvement. Key points, it's a gradual reduction in waste. It's designed to empower the people that do the work to solve the work. You want your frontline people providing input on how to do things. They know how to do the process better than any of us. They're doing it daily, right? They know what they hate. They know what drives them crazy. How do we as leaders empower them to give us suggestions and even take ownership into improving things, right? As a leader, you've got to motivate them. What continuous improvement is not is major changes without the people that do the work's input. Someone could argue that we've got projects to implement new IT software that's going to be amazing and revolutionary. Yes, that's improvement, right? But it's a planned project, it's methodical, it's involving people on the team that do the work. Remember, people that do the work need to be involved. So that's just a small introduction to continuous improvement. So where do you begin? How do you even know what to work on, right? So some companies are great. They've got company initiatives, right? So places I've been in the past had like 3 and 3. Let's avoid 300 million in spending or increase 300 million in sales in 3 years. And if the company is really good, they have all of those goals falling down to each function. And so each function, each individual knows how they play into that goal. That's challenging to get there, right, Julie?
Oh, very, 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 very challenging.
But it is. But when it's done well, it's awesome. And everyone knows why they're coming to work. Even if they're not directly impacting that 300 million, they're impacting something that's going to be helping that 300 million, which then leads you to challenging goals, right? That a company leader could give to you. We were constantly given these ridiculous goals at Toyota. It was very frustrating sometimes to work there. I mean, model after model after model, you worked for 4 years on something to say, hey, great job, now do more next time. I can remember we finally hit almost like a pivot point for us there where we were trying to save money in packaging and logistics, and there was only so much you can do with packaging and logistics. So what we did is we actually reached across the aisle to purchasing, design, manufacturing, and other functions to figure out a whole new way to just, to figure out where we actually source our parts. We had some huge cost reduction activity wins when purchasing realized, wow, if I source that really large part really close to the plant, I can reduce logistics cost. Yeah, it's a small piece price up, but overall it's a cost down for the entire car, which is what we wanted. And the only reason we got to this ability to identify that we had to work with purchasing and design is because there was some genius there who challenged us to document all of our processes. Do you know how what an amazing task it was to document all the processes you did? And what we did is he challenged us. It was about a 6-month project. He rented out a room at a hotel for a good couple months. And what we eventually did is we posted all of the processes and how they went between each function. And we were able to visualize the internal supplier and customer to all of these activities. It helped us spawn these amazing ideas that helped us save so much more money. So again, visualizing processes will help you identify internal suppliers and customers to help you win those huge achievements. Another way we can improve things is things that drive us crazy, right? We all have things that drive us crazy at work, and some are just going to happen. You can't fix them, but some you can actually control, and I challenge you to fix that. And the worst thing that I never thought that we would put on this slide 3 months ago is a global pandemic, right? It's crazy. It's crazy how this global pandemic is forcing people to change and do things differently. So before I go to my next slide, I've got another poll. So this is the one about what
You don't have
challenges.
this one, Jen.
Oh, just kidding. Never mind. It was a dumb one, so you didn't miss out. So global pandemic is forcing us to do things different, right? We have a problem we have to solve to keep things as somewhat normal, right? We all have to get groceries. Shipt does not have enough people to pick and pack groceries and drop them off at our house. So we still have to go to the grocery store. Our problem is that COVID-19 is very contagious, right? People need to stay 6 feet apart from each other to hopefully prevent the contagion from getting one person to another. So here's a grocery store, and there's probably ones in your area that have done the same, that have implemented one-way aisles, right? The goal here is to keep people moving forward and staying hopefully at that 6+ feet away. Now, if you make a mistake and you miss something, you can't double back. You have to go around and do another loop. Yeah, it is what it is, right? Now, what about when we can't be 6 feet apart? We have to be closer, like at the checkout line, right? So they've implemented, a small barrier of plexiglass, and then behind them they have that curtain. It's probably like a meat curtain or something, who knows? It's not perfect, right? But it's something that they're putting in place to keep their employees, which is a huge demonstration of respect, as well as the customer safe, right? Who cares if it's duct taped together? Let's try something. And that's what one of the best things about these examples is that people are trying something, they're being innovative. Over a couple weeks or maybe months, we're going to figure out what actually works with these barriers that we're going to keep up at our stores. Then you can go invest in something a little bit more permanent, right? So as leaders and employees, how are you innovating? How are you challenging your people? How are you challenge them to be so innovative without holding a global pandemic over their head, right? This is the kind of brainstorming and activity you want, so you can continue to focus on exceeding customer expectations, lowering cost, increasing quality, and getting at the right speed.
It's really cool to be able to see people being so creative at this point, because I feel like every time I turn around during the days right now, people are really just trying to be creative in ways to stay afloat, to keep their businesses going, to keep their employees safe, all out of that respect for every single individual. You've seen some companies completely fail at that during this time, and some that are doing fantastic. And I'm keeping my notes on that because I want to see those companies that are doing what they can for the employees. I'll go out of my way to go there when this is all over.
Absolutely. Everyone's always watching. This isn't an extreme leadership training class, but it's so key to what Julie said. People are always watching. So be mindful of the vantage of yourself. Yeah. The second point the second value on our house is respect for every individual. So receiving respect is important because it helps everyone feel safe and enough to express yourself, right? Sometimes when you're new at a company, you've got new leaders or new people around you, you can be afraid and you're going to hold back. But knowing that there's respect for you and it's okay to make mistakes, you're going to speak up at meetings. You're not going to be berated by a boss or that superhero at your company who's smarter than everyone, right? No one's going to speak up. It's not fun. It means accepting someone for who they are, even when they're different from you and when you don't agree with them. So is respect a given? Not always. Some level of respect might come from a title, but more is going to be earned based on how you act and what you do. And keep in mind, you have to give respect to get it. So obviously we have examples of saying hello, and when have you ever been in a hallway and someone says, hey, what's up? Yet they just continue walking away. Like when someone says that, or if you say to someone, listen, and give them feedback that you actually care what they said. Commonalities will be, discovered in those small hallway conversations. So this is something I found when I was creating this PowerPoint. Harvard Business Review polled 20,000 employees, and I'm going to read it. So, no other leadership behavior had a bigger effect on employees. Being treated with respect was more important to employees than recognition and appreciation, communicating an inspiring vision, providing useful feedback, or even opportunities for learning, growth, and development. So I love that they're putting respect on that huge pedestal because it's huge. If respect is so big, how do we translate our behaviors and what we're doing for employees? Here are a couple examples from our past. There's some more on here. I'm just going to identify a couple that I love. The first one being documented. Why does that mean I respect people in the workplace? Well, if I care about training my employees, I'm going to have something documented so they know how to do the work. And if it's documented, it means I can always go back if they forget how to do something and figure it out on their own. I'm also empowering them to do it right all the time because the instruction is written to provide the right quality at the end. Challenging goals, getting people out of their comfort zone, right? This sounds weird, don't I want to make life easy? Well, unfortunately, our companies want to win, right? And by winning, we have to reduce cost, increase quality, etc. So we have to have challenging goals. If I didn't respect someone, I wouldn't spend the time to develop them. Therefore, I wouldn't give them challenging goals. So if you work for me and I'm not giving you any challenges, you might want to ask why, right? It's a big deal. Honesty, right? Why is honesty being respectful? Well, it's not easy, but by being honest, I'm demonstrating respect in someone. And if I have respect for someone, I'm going to be honest with them, give them constructive feedback on something that maybe didn't go so well, or they didn't do so amazing, because I care about their growth and performance. I'm willing to be uncomfortable for them, and I'm willing to unfortunately make them comfortable so they can continue to get better. A huge thing you can do right now, especially while we're all remote, is have a 10 to 15 minute check-in with any of your team members. So if you're an employee and you report to someone and you don't have a quick 15-minute check-in every week just to see how things are going, report on work, I highly suggest you ask for it. And if you're a leader of a team, I highly recommend that you schedule these immediately. The purpose of this is it gives the employee a chance to brag about what they've done, what they're experiencing, possibly a time for them to vent about the struggles they have at home. And, they've got kids running around and it's driving them crazy and they're tired of drinking alcohol at 10 in the morning or something. Just kidding. But the coolest thing about this is even if there's nothing work-related to talk about, do not cancel that meeting. Keep it. Here's your chance to ask what they're going to do over the weekend. Here's a chance to ask them about something totally random that you would never come up with. And then make a note, follow up with it next week. Ask them how their weekend was. Show that you remembered what they actually did. Who knows what kind of connections this is going to create or new skill sets that are going to be found out. You might find that this person likes what they do, but they really want to be in another function. How do you help them get there? Right? So these conversations are so valuable for all of those kind of new learnings about individuals. I know, Julie, you're a huge proponent of this.
Absolutely. And I really love the learning-centered piece of this one. And it's interesting to me because you look at all of these and you say, hey, this isn't just manufacturing. All of these concepts to be able to provide that respect, they're applicable in every aspect of your life, whether it's personal or professional. The learning-centered one always sticks out to me because I try to do my best that I don't want to be the only one who can utilize these tools and these concepts. I want to share as much as I can with respect to anything that I'm learning. I want to give that to other people so that they can learn right along with it. And you see in organizations that are not necessarily lean in this type of culture, you have people who hoard information or who hoard processes. They don't want to share it with somebody else because that's their power. And really, in that lean environment, that's where you share everything so that everybody knows that you have multiple people who can do things. And I think that shows in situations of what we're dealing with in the environment here today, where you are trying to do more with less people because maybe somebody's out sick, maybe somebody had to stay at home because their kids are out of school. You've got that learning that is already there, that cross training that will continue to help you float and go forward.
Absolutely. 100%. One misconception about lean is that it's about reducing people. We implement an improvement and goodbye, so-and-so. So it's not about firing people when you implement an improvement. Keep in mind, you've planned this, right? You've done some measurements. You actually know how much of a process is maybe being eliminated or possibly moved. Most of the time, that's not one full person, right? You can't just chop off their head and send them back to their job. There's still a full head count, it's still required. But what can you do with them, right? Or if you were to spread all of the work over the department so everyone has 10% extra time every week. Continuous improvement, challenge them to find a better way to do something. Figure out how to build in quality. Document the training so when someone new is hired, you can train them properly. Send them to training, right? Another thing you could do is plan on attrition, right? Someone's retiring soon, right? So we're not going to backfill that person. We'll be shifting headcount another way. A fantastic example I have in the last year is we were working with a recruiting team at a company, and we were able to implement a couple improvements and some new technology upgrades that we actually didn't need all of the recruiters. We did a bunch of manpower planning and we showed that we had excess people. Well, at the same time down the hall, marketing's responsibility was increasing because they were opening up more and more communities across many states. So they needed more people to manage all the events, to be on site, to be the host. So they were able to move headcount from one function to another. So no one had to get let go. And it was cool for everyone because you had new thought processes going into marketing to kind of share new experiences. Julie, did you have anything to add?
I do on that one. And it's interesting because when you can really focus some of these events on changing people's world from non-value added work to value added work. We had a situation once where we were doing some process mapping and identifying what work was value added and not value adding. And I saw the tears starting to well in her eyes as task after task after task got listed as non-value added. And I said, you know what, Shelley, this isn't about you doing non-value added work and not being valued here. This is, we value you so much that we want to eliminate that non-value added work so we can get you working more on value added activities, entirely transactional in this case. And then also thinking about it's not reducing people, but also adding value to their time. The biggest compliment I think we ever got paid working on a process improvement once was for a gentleman who had told me he had missed his kid's t-ball game consistently the entire last season because of the work that he was doing. And we changed around his process just a little bit that got him out the door about 10 minutes earlier every single day. And he made almost every game of his t-ball season, of his kid's t-ball season that year. And that meant more to me than pretty much any amount of dollars that they could have thrown me of what we were doing from a project, to know the impact of what that made. Because I was that t-ball kid whose dad didn't make it there on time. So it impacted me when he said that. So that's really what lean is about, is finding out what that value is and really pushing on it.
So moving up from our foundation of values, we're going to go to our first principle, which is standardization. Again, it takes time and it takes requirements to document things, but standardization gives people a voice. It tells them what is expected of them. It obviously builds in safety and quality. And it establishes repeatable results because it's documented, so people know how to do it repeatedly every time. The first one we've got here is standardized work. So we've all dealt with standardized work in one way or another. Maybe it wasn't so standardized, but maybe standardish, and recipes, right? We all maybe followed a recipe here and there, made up our own recipes. MapQuest, who printed out MapQuest instructions back in the day, so when they would travel, they could figure out how to get somewhere. IKEA instructions, right? I haven't bought anything recently, but from what I remember, there was very little words and all pictures. And knock on wood, 95% of the time, you get what your desired outcome was. We're following instructions. So a mixture of pictures and words, right, to help people depending on how they learn and how they act. Have you ever used a cheat sheet, right? Have you ever pulled out that sticky note that you made a long time ago on how to submit a PO, right? Or request vacation, right? Sometimes some systems are goofy. I know I have a cheat sheet in Excel for for when I have to do my invoicing and expense reports in QuickBooks, which is new to me. And instead of calling Julie every month towards the end, I finally wrote it down so I could just do it on my own, right? I'm creating an autonomous environment for myself. So we've all used different types of standard works. When you get really mature and experienced, your standardized work, especially at your companies, can have cycle times associated to how long certain steps take, right? Setting an expectation. But it also builds in the why. Why am I doing this? So when I'm training someone, I can reinforce why this step is so important. Why is quality important here? What does the customer want? It's fantastic. It is work, but it's so necessary. Julie's got a fun story on what she's done recently.
Oh, on my standard work here,
POs.
sorry.
Yeah.
On my POs, when we were doing standard work in this case, it came back to actually help me in this situation. I'd ran an event just about 2 years ago on documenting how the vendor process worked and how POs got paid at a company I was working at. And I found out, and I was mortified, that I was one of the ones who was causing the problem on how POs were paid. And it was my fault that POs were being paid late. But I had no idea because nobody ever stopped to tell me that I was doing the process wrong. I was doing the way that I was taught, and I was just gleefully going on, blissfully unaware that there was a problem until we got into this event. And I could not stop apologizing the entire way through. And I'm like, I wish you would have just told me. And that's where that respect for the individuals come into play, because we hadn't created an environment yet where it was comfortable to say and raise your hand, oh, you're doing this wrong. Here's the actual way to do it. So instead, because they didn't tell me that, I was making their life ridiculous, having them do a lot of rework in these cases, in this case. And now we're actually a vendor of theirs, so they're a client of ours, and we had to set up a vendor setup and get paid via POs in these cases. So it actually benefited us that we put that process in place. But this is really where you just have to have that respect, call it out. It's not going to do anybody any help if you don't tell somebody that they might be doing the process wrong.
Mm-hmm. And with that, as a leader who owns a process, you have to reinforce it. You have to ask about it. You can't just assume that you rolled it out once, it's going to stick. So how do you continue to ask for it? Show that you know it's important and you feel it's important. You have to show that to the team, right? Otherwise, it's just going to go by the wayside and you're going to go back to your old ways. Key point with standardized work, they have to be used, they have to be assessed, and they have to be improved upon, right? Otherwise, we're never going to get better as a company. The next one, visual management, is probably my favorite part of, I love all of this, don't get me wrong, but I love visual management. And you'll hear me say visual management a lot in my days. I like it because it communicates the same thing to everyone. Who's gone to a foreign country, flown to a foreign country and made it to baggage claim, right? Or got to a car or got to their hotel. You did it because visual management. Unless you spoke the language, you saw arrows and little bags or taxis that showed you where to go to get what you needed. It's all around us. It's on the expressway. It's stoplights, stop signs. I used to get mad at Costco because inside they don't have visual management on where everything is stored, right? It drives me crazy. But as I've been a customer there for now 6+ years, I know for the most part, except when they change, like their poke.
And that's intentional, by the way, to keep you there longer.
Keep me there and makes me go and look. So there's logic behind it. I just drives me crazy sometimes. I have to give Costco so much credit. I was there today, actually, and The way they have everything laid out, they're forcing people into a single line to get into the building. They have X's on the floor so you know where to stand, so you stay 6 feet apart. They have signs showing you which entrance to go in. And I'm like, oh, you almost can't make a mistake, knock on wood. Here's a quick example of what we're doing at my house right now. It's working about maybe 80% of the time, but both Andy and I work, so we can't be with the kids all day, every day. And I wanted to create something where they could, one, see everything that they've accomplished during the day, but two, figure out what to do next. So if they're going to come ask us what to do, I can send them back to their large sticky note on the back door that says, what haven't you done yet? Oh, I haven't used my 3 screen times yet. I'm going to go do more screen time. Okay, sure, sit on your iPad for an hour and a half, but then you can't do any in the afternoon. What thing am I going to do outside? Am I going to build something, play a game? And about a week in, we implemented new sticky notes, which were orange, which were rewards for good behavior, possibly reading extra books, or even doing flashcards together. So they actually work hard together because they know they have to get more screen time, which is what they always want. So there's my real life visual management example. And they love it. They love running over there and moving a sticky note to the other side to show that they did. So for everyone on the phone, what are you using visual management for, right? What are you communicating? Do you have anything? Do you show up to work and you're lost? You don't know what's going on. So think about how you can change that with small elements of visual management. And the last item under the standardization principle is problem solving. Why is it under standardization? Well, problem solving follows some sort of method to solve a problem. There's many different methods, 7-step, 8 steps, DMAIC, but no matter what, it always wants us to start with the current situation. We always want to get the root cause. We always want to talk to the people that do the work to get the information so we can understand what the root cause of the problem is. From there, we can create different solutions and countermeasures to implement. But no matter what, no matter who we're working with, no matter what we make problem solving look like, it's always going to be the same methodical steps. So that's why it falls under problem solving. And you've probably been waiting for the 8 ways. Like, why haven't I talked about the 8 ways yet, or 7 + 1? So here's some examples of the 8 ways in the office setting. So we'll be emailing this to you. We've got a printout from this and also blank. So you can print it out, put it next to your computer at work. You can print it out and put it in your kitchen so you can fill out what waste are going on at your home. Just want to call out on a few of these, especially in the office, is waiting is a waste, right? You could be doing other work at that same time. You're waiting for decisions. You're waiting for paperwork. You're waiting for a conference room, right? No need to raise your hand if you've ever waited for a conference room, except right now, right? This is crazy. There's no, maybe everyone works from home all the time. We'll never be waiting like that anymore. Defects, right? Defects are any form of rework. Think of figuring something in, losing information. Turnover. Remember the example I gave you in the beginning about talent acquisition, hiring someone? So I've got 2 scenarios for you. Let's pretend we didn't have good requirements along the whole way. And we hired someone. We probably made a so-so decision. Turns out they didn't know how to do anything. They said they could code, or we needed them to code and they couldn't do it. So maybe they're better suited for another company. And unfortunately, we have to admit we made a bad decision. That's turnover. We're now having to go back to the beginning of the process to start all over again to find someone. The second scenario I want to give you is, say we did that whole process correctly. We interviewed with the right questions. We identified the right talent in our candidate. We made a good decision in hiring. They had experience. They knew what needed to be to do this job, but we didn't train them. We didn't have any of the training documented. We didn't give them time to learn. And 3 weeks in, we're like, well, why aren't they meeting needs? Why aren't they meeting expectations? Oh my gosh, this is crazy. And we let them go, right? That gives me a stomachache thinking about that. Unfortunately, it happens. And the root cause in that one wasn't that we hired the wrong person. It was our fault. It's our fault that we didn't train them, give them expectations, give them time, or anything. So it's bad. And then the last one I don't like is extra processing, re-entering data, re-asking for approvals, constantly having to ask for things that aren't coming your way. At a finance function where we were implementing lean with them, we did an inventory of all of their reports that they would create every month. And they had about 20 to 25 reports. And I'm like, this is a lot of reports. And we went through the customer of it, and it was the president, all of them were the president. We're like, does he actually use these reports? And then the answer was, I don't know. Like, well, why are you making them if you don't know he uses them? Well, he asked for them like 6 months ago, so we just assume he still needs them. It's like, how long are you spending on these reports? Well, a couple hours a week, over 4 weeks. And it's like, holy smokes, people. Why didn't you just ask him if he's still using it? Well, they hadn't established that whole respect for every individual. The communication wasn't there, and they were wasting so much time, right? All we did was plant that question. They went to find out, and lo and behold, he didn't need them anymore. It was just kind of a one-time analysis. It's crazy, right? Some forms of waste you can't avoid, right? Some of them are going to happen, but what can you control in regards to the reduction of maybe other waste? How can you partner up with people to get rid of some of it? Even at its basic level, how do you at least raise your hand to say, why am I doing this again? Saying it in a polite way, right? So maybe you can start to work with others to figure out how to eliminate it. Julie?
So this is an example. We live this, we breathe this at our house here. My husband actually is an industrial engineer. I'm a mechanical, but we live all this stuff all day long. And we have a senior dog, and she has a lot of supplements. So this is what was sitting out on our counter up in the top left-hand corner. And it was taking up a lot of space in the kitchen counter. It was taking us basically an hour and 45, or a minute and 45 seconds every time we were making her dinner. And Buttons is very, very impatient. She gives you that stare from the edge of the couch. So we went through and we tried to figure out a way that we could reduce the amount of space and the amount of time it took for us to get her supplements and her dinner for her at night. So once a week we go through, and I should say my husband does because he's awesome. He goes through and he puts all these supplements into those little containers you see in the bottom right-hand corner. And the footprint reduction went from a 10 by 14 footprint down to a 3 by 6 footprint on the counter. It went from being a minute and 47 seconds 2 times a day down to a very, very short amount of time, because you're basically just dumping it in when you're making her meal. It takes us about 7 minutes to put all these together every week. But most importantly, it's a 100% increase in Button satisfaction. So well worth it in those cases. But this was essentially all of our 8 forms of waste all into one quick example.
Oh, absolutely. We were lucky enough to move our laundry room from our first floor to our second floor, which increases the chance of laundry actually making it back to their respective rooms to be put away.
All great things.
So how do we find root cause of some of these problems? The first example is the 5 why. It's an iterative approach. It can be done anywhere. Here's a quick example. I was late to my morning meeting. Why was I late? I woke up late. Why was I up late? Or why did I wake up late? I was tired and I pressed snooze. Well, why was I tired? I was up late with my 4-year-old who continues to just wake me up all night. Why was she up late? Well, she wasn't tired. Well, why wasn't she tired? She didn't run around. Well, why didn't she run around? Well, she's at home right now. Why isn't she at home? Daycare's closed. Why is daycare closed? COVID-19, yada, yada, right? So at some point you have to stop, right? You have to stop where you could actually control the problem. I can fix why she didn't run around a lot. So if you see my kids doing like laps around the house during the day, this is why. I can't fix COVID-19 and the fact that daycare is closed, but I can fix that. And a key point for leaders who are doing this, make sure to be positive with your questions. If someone gives you an answer you don't like, don't furrow your eyebrow. Continue to ask questions. If they're going down a track that's maybe not totally out of our realm and you can't solve it, ask questions to get them back to the stream that you can actually solve. So we'll be giving you this handout as well. You can print it out and start to think about how you can use it. And then the next one is another simple one. It's the fishbone diagram. The thing I love about the fishbone diagram is you can do it with large groups. What you're doing is you're writing the causes of a potential problem on a board or whiteboard or anything. I love it because when you have the people in the room who have to be heard, who will continue to speak until you do something, you can write their answers up here. And all of a sudden, if you start to see a bunch of the same causes throughout, that kind of puts an aha moment, like, oh, maybe I should go investigate these causes, right? Or maybe I have a couple groups of causes that I can go investigate. They might not solve your actual problem, but they're going to give you clues on where to go begin and to collect data. So we'll also be giving you this template to use. It's pretty easy. It's very flexible. There's some purists out there who think it's always the same scales, but we're happy to make it work for any team and any problem. And now finally on the last two principles, we've got just in time. So keep in mind, this isn't just for products. This can be for services or even for people. Back to the original example of recruiting. I want to have the right person at the right place, the right skill set with the right talent, etc. Think about a purchasing team right now who's trying to purchase PPE and they need an approval on a PO, right? Again, that's the right activity happening at the right time so I can get that order. If I don't get that ordered, we might not be able to stay open tomorrow, right? Or the next day because I can't keep my people safe. So again, just in time sits on top of that standardization, right? We've implemented good processes. People know what they're doing. They're engaged. They're communicated with. That promotes just in time. Right? We love to see value streams documented for companies because we can identify inputs and outputs, and probably more pushing than pulling in regards to the push and pull systems. But it tells us how things are flowing, right? It identifies where we can levelize workload, and it's visual management. Who doesn't love a good process documented? And then our last principle is quality processes. It sounds so simple, yet it's so hard to achieve. One of the biggest things with quality is that you have to instill it in your company. It's got to be in your culture. Your leaders have to preach it. Your leaders have to empower people to make a decision that this isn't good or this is bad. I need to stop doing it. Again, back to the car example. I'm not going to put a white side view mirror on a red car. I'm going to stop the line, right? Just like the recruiting process, I want to make sure I have good decisions along the way with good input and good output so I know I'm getting the right person there to start. I'm setting the standard and expectations in the process. And in a perfect world, if we can build error proofing in so it automatically stops stuff from going on to the next stage, that's great. Think about when you order something, right? You put the wrong credit card number in or the wrong, security code. It stops you. That's essentially error proofing. As a leader, when you try to delegate something, or maybe you get more responsibility, you have to hand off some responsibility. If it's not documented, how can you clearly communicate what the person's supposed to do? So take a look at yourself the next time you delegate something and didn't come back as you expected. Did you train them? Is it documented? Did you walk them through how to do it? And if the answer is no, then you're going to have to go back to the beginning. And then patience, obviously. So in summary, you probably noticed we didn't bring up some of the huge concepts that you hear tied to lean, 5S, Kanban, continuous improvement roadmaps, lessons learned, Kaizen events, etc. One, we are running out of time, so we couldn't do it. Two, without establishing the foundation of what we mentioned in the lean house, none of them are going to stick. We've all worked for companies that had flavor of the day, flavor of the week, who implemented these amazing initiatives, but it didn't stick without a command and control environment, and that's not fun. So you lose faith in people, they lose trust, they're frustrated, you waste a bunch of time and money. It's just not fun. The good news is we've all seen it, we've all lived in it, but we've also changed it. So Julie and I have both worked for organizations where we're able to take it from one side to the other, and it's pretty awesome. So the challenge for you is now is time to talk to your customer. Use this time when you may be down or slow in different ways. Find out what they need. Talk to your internal customer. Number two, what waste can you remove from your activities, right? Again, time is different right now. How do you remove those wastes so you can do more with less? We'll be giving you handouts on that waste. Number three is what visual management can you implement, right? What can you do to help people decide what to do next or understand the score of the game? And then number four is what standard work can you get in place now while you may have some, I'm not going to say free time, but your time is allocated differently. So with that being said, we hope you enjoyed our introduction to lean concepts. I know we focused a lot on the soft skills. We both believe that the foundation and those attributes are key for anyone's success.
And just as a reminder, you'll get a copy of the presentation as well as the handouts for you to jump in shortly, probably later this afternoon, this evening, once we can get it uploaded. This presentation will also be available on our YouTube channel and will be linked in that email as well. And then don't forget to join us for our next webinar on Wednesday, May 20th from 2 to 3 Eastern. And that one will be on documenting all the fun lessons learned and how we use those to be able to plan better for next time. So we'll give you a formalized process on how to get all those things into one place, realize what you've learned, and then how to apply that moving forward. So thank you, Jen. Great job. It was great to hear about Lean in our office. And thank you all for spending some of your time with us this afternoon. We'd love to hear your feedback. Shoot us an email, reply to our message, and you'll be getting a survey as well. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
Have a great
Thank
afternoon.
you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.